Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, here with an upset play. Understand, when we say upset, that means that most of the world is expecting you to lose on this fight. So this is really only for very high-risk gamblers who are willing to take big-time chances by having a position that most people think you're crazy to have. Mike Dallas against Mauricio Herrera. Just remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I like the upset here, right? We're way off in the wilderness on this one. I like the upset here. I like Mike Dallas Jr. He's coming off of a loss, right? He got stopped in his last fight officially. So understand what you're dealing with. But he was out on his feet. He didn't hit the canvas. He didn't seem, in my opinion, to suffer a big-time concussion like Paul Williams did against Sergio Martinez. Right? Mike Dallas has a nice jab. He moves around the ring. He does better against fighters who aren't able to walk him down. I believe that's favorite Mauricio Herrera, right? Mauricio Herrera, in my opinion, is a mid-range hooker. In other words, he's more comfortable a couple feet away from you than he is up on you, right? He's not walking you down. He's walking up to you. His biggest win was against Provodnikov, and understand Provodnikov is an aggressive fighter. He was the aggressor in that fight. I don't believe that Herrera can outbox Mike Dallas Jr. from distance. I believe this fight is a poor man's Felix Sturm versus Matthew Macklin. It's a jabber who can move a little bit against a mid-range hooker. And all I'm saying is when a mid-range hooker runs into a jab and gets hit by it, that impacts the judges. Now, while Dallas lost his last fight, I would argue, and the fight's up on YouTube, take a look at it, against, I believe his name's Jacito Lopez. I would argue that Dallas is a fast starter. This fight, according to BoxRec.com, is listed as only a 10-rounder, right? If you look at the Provodnikov fight that Herrera had, his biggest win, you'll notice that Herrera, in my opinion, started that fight slow. In a 10-round fight with a fast starter working behind a jab against a mid-range hooker, I like the fast starter's chances, right? If Dallas can just bank the early rounds, if he could win 4 of the first 5 rounds, then I believe Dallas is going to be in the driver's seat to win this fight. Let's go further and let's get off the grid, away from the media narrative. You know, the folklore is that a round is a round, that the 7th round is completely independent of the first round, and that the judges turn in their scorecards at the end of each round, right? From a gambler's perspective, I don't buy it. What I think happens is that judges get hypnotized during fights. In other words, if they're sitting down and watching a fight and a guy comes out and he actually is shooting an effective jab and he takes, in a fight that's, up for grabs, he takes the early rounds in that fight. I believe that the judges get hypnotized into picking that guy in close rounds later in the fight. In other words, in my opinion, and this is my own opinion, right? Obviously, it's not mainstream thought. If a fighter goes out there and wins the first round, the second round, the third round, if that 4th round, which should be independent, if that 4th round is close, if there's some debate on who has won the 4th round, I believe the judges will give it to the guy who they've just voted on in the first 3 rounds. Not only that, judges are boxing professionals. If they're sitting down and they realize that, a fighter practically has the fight in the bag. Let's say it's a 10-round fight and a fighter has already won, let's say, the first 5 rounds. I believe that a judge in like round 7 or round 8, if it's close, will shade it toward that fighter. After all, they've already voted for the guy the first 4 or 5 rounds, right? They're already acclimated to what that guy's accomplishing in the ring. So I consider the fact that I believe Dallas is going to be off to a fast start, and you'll know whether I'm right by the 3rd or 4th round of this fight. I believe the fact that Dallas, in my opinion, is going to be off to a fast start and that he's going to be the one able to touch Herrera at longer range than Herrera is able to touch him. I actually think that that is going to tilt the scoring in his favor, not just in the early rounds, but in later rounds where it might be close. Keep in mind, neither of these guys is a dramatic knockout puncher. Also, as people who've read my book know, I'm a big believer in reading the cuts and bruises. And take a look at that Provodnikov fight. You're going to see that Herrera, quite frankly, was tattooed on both of his eyes. Both of his eyes were red, were swollen. The doctor took a look at his eyes to see if he could continue the fight. There was some question on whether he could see. All I could say is this. That shows me that Herrera gets hit in the eyes. Right? Where the bruises are where the guy's getting hit. And so all I can say is, Dallas should be able to hit Herrera in the eyes with his jab. And, of course, when a fighter's eyes have a tendency to swell up, that's a big-time concern when you're facing a pinpoint jabber. Let me also point out, too, that when you look at Dallas's record on BoxRec.com, might not look that impressive. He hasn't exactly fought, a list of Hall of Famers. But just understand that Dallas at one point was actually the main sparring partner for Manny Pacquiao. So I think Dallas is a live underdog. It is a high-risk play because, of course, you're getting better than even money odds. You're literally picking the guy that the casino feels is going to lose the fight. That's what I'm doing here, but then gambling's about taking risks. I like Mike Dallas in this one. Very high-risk play. If you're timid or if you are looking for sure things, this is not the fight to bet on. This is only for big-time gamblers who understand that a part of their betting portfolio has to be on high-risk fights, right? You're not going to beat the casino unless you fight the odds. And this is really only for the entrepreneurs who are prepared to take an underdog coming off of a loss against a fighter who apparently has a minor title. Not a world title. I believe he has a U.S. title. That's Mauricio Herrera. I like Mike Dallas, the underdog, in this fight. Let's see how it turns out. Win, lose, or draw after the fight. I hope you stop by and leave your comments for me here on YouTube. And, of course, I hope you visit us at predictboxing.blogspot.com and gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.